Welcome back to another episode of Why Jesus. On today's show, we have Kaavya from New York, USA. Hello, Kaavya. Welcome to Why Jesus.
Hi, Viji. How are you?
Good. Kaavya, before we even move on with the show, can you tell us a little more about yourself, your family, what your interests are?
Sure. After high school, I went into college. I did 4 years of nursing school. I got my bachelor's. And in May of 2015, I finished nursing school, got my BSN, and I went ahead and wrote my boards. I wrote my RN exam, and I got my license. And now I'm a registered nurse. I work in an ICU in the Bronx, and I live with my parents. They both work. I also have a little sister. She's in middle school.
Kaavya, what made you take up nursing as your career?
Ever since I was small, like I can even go back to the age of 3, I vividly remember wanting to be a doctor. But in this country, that's a very challenging goal to obtain. It's a very long and tedious process, and I didn't want to be in school for 10, 15 years. So I looked at my other options, and nursing happens to have really great higher educational opportunities. So I figured, that's a better backup for me. So let me go to nursing school, work some, and then I'll go back and get some higher degrees.
What is the scope of nursing in the US? I know it's very different from Asia and other parts of the world.
So right after high school, you have two options. You can do your associates and your bachelor's. If you do your associates, it's a 2-year program, and then you write your boards and you can work as an LPN, but that's not recommended anymore because people want students who have a bachelor's. Bachelor's, after high school, you have to go to school for 4 years, and then you write your boards, and then you get your BSN, and you become a bachelor's degree nurse. You work for a little while, and then you have two options. Again, you can go back for your master's in the clinical setting or in the administrative setting. The more popular one these days is the clinical setting, where you can do this thing called nurse practitioner, which is like you practice almost as like a doctor. You can treat, you can diagnose, you can prescribe. So for those people who wanted to do medicine, but if something other came up and they couldn't, this is a great backup for them. After that, you can even go up and do your PhD. It's called Doctor of Nurse Practice, which is just a doctorate in nursing.
Interesting, Kaavya. Kaavya, do you feel like nursing is a stigmatized profession?
Oh, definitely. But then again, it depends on where you are from. In India, I would say yes. Here, not so much. Here, it's a very honorable profession. Wherever I go, people look at me. I'm like, oh, you're a nurse. Wow, thank you for your service. But whenever I tell somebody in India I'm a nurse, they're like, oh, you couldn't do anything else better? Didn't you not do well in school? It's a job that people think you do because you couldn't get in anywhere else, or you're not smart enough, or you couldn't afford anything else. Which I think it's time they need to change that outlook.
Yeah, that's a sad thinking, I think, especially among the Asian population.
Definitely.
Now, Kaavya, what do you say about the coursework? I know that there's a general notion that nursing is a very tough program to get through. How was your experience in nursing school?
Oh, it was very hard, very, very hard. I lived at home and I commuted to school, and nursing definitely has a lot of clinical hours. So there have been times when I've had to drive 1 hour away and wake up at like 4:30 in the morning just to go to clinical, and then you come back home, you have homework, you have lab reports, you're not just taking that one class, you're taking 18, 20 credits, so it's tedious. You have exams every week, every other week, so it's very, very hard. It's not the trail for the stupid kid or the one who couldn't get in anywhere. It's very hard to get through, and you have to maintain your grades. If you mess up in one class, you're back a semester. If you mess up in 2, you're out of the program. And at that point, you're not even going to get in it anywhere else, so you have to change your career entirely. So it's very challenging.
Wow. Now, what was the most challenging aspect of the nursing program or your college life, Kaavya?
Definitely the academics, but beyond that, the social aspect. So what you would see in like TVs and movies, college life is definitely about the drinking, the party scene, it's very lively and social, and that's not my scene. I'm not a very outgoing social person. So making friends or like having friends that see eye to eye with me on morals was very hard.
So how did you deal with those challenging situations, Kaavya?
Two things: finding a friend that I can lean on, finding a group of people that share those values with me, and more importantly, prayer life. I had to fall back heavily on prayer life and finding that deeper strength.
Can you tell us more about your prayer life?
I was born and raised as a Christian. Christian values have been instilled in me ever since I could remember. But more importantly, once we moved to America, we started going to a ministry called Interdenominational Christian Fellowship, which is a fasting prayer ministry. And basically, we have a meeting every week. It's meditating on the Bible, singing, praising God, praying most importantly. And I found a lot of strength in that. That definitely helped me get through a lot of tough times.
Now, you said it helped you get through a lot of tough times. Can you share some of those experiences with us, Kaavya?
Sure. Here as a new grad, it's very hard to find a job, and in the nursing field, they definitely need people with experience. And as a new grad, you're definitely not going to have experience. So the best bet is to have like an internship. And I applied right before my senior year. I applied to maybe 12, 13 internships, and I didn't hear back from anybody except for this one place, and that was a very competitive place. They had about 100 applicants, and the interview process was extremely difficult. It was like an interview panel with an extremely complicated background check. I went to the interview, I came out crying. It was impossibly hard, like nothing I was prepared for. But then the leader of this ministry, he was praying for me. I had sought his guidance, and I believe through those prayers, I was able to get the internship, and eventually that paved the way for me to get the job right now that I have.
Now, Kaavya, you sound so grounded in your faith in Jesus. Has there been any time that you've dwindled in your faith?
Definitely. Academically, like I said, it was very hard, and even beyond that, that isolating feeling, like you have nobody to turn to in school. Everybody's doing their own thing. Like after school, everybody goes out and drinks or parties or clubs, and I don't do that. So the next day you're back in school, everybody's talking about that. Like, okay, I'll be here not talking about that because I don't know what you're talking about. So that isolating feeling was, it was hard. Like there's nobody you can relate to. There's nobody you can talk to. So yeah, that was very hard.
How did you overcome those situations?
I had to lean heavily on my prayer life. Like I said, I found a lot of great friends in this ministry who helped me get through it. And then even in school, I found a few people who I could relate with the same morals. And beyond that, in this ministry, like I said before, it was a fasting prayer ministry. So every maybe 3-4 months, we have a fasting prayer when you come together, you sing and you praise and you meditate on the Word of God again. But in the end, there's a session called Anointing of the Holy Spirit, where this leader prays for you specifically, and it's this very comforting feeling. Like you walk out of there with a lot of peace, and like you feel like all the problems that you're facing, it's going to be okay. Like you can deal with it, you can handle it. So that gave me a lot of strength. That's the ministry, and then the fasting prayers in general gave me that push, that drive to go through whatever that I was going through.
Has your spiritual life or faith in Jesus ever affected the friendships that you have or your relationships with others in your age group, Kaavya?
Definitely. I was basically the only one in my class who had any like faith in God or was like a practicing like Christian, I would say. So there were stigmas that were associated with it, and again, going back, like that makes it very hard to find friends. They would leave you out of making plans. Like they would go out and do things and not ask you, and eventually it gets to you, you know?
And what did you do in such situations?
I had to go back and lean on my prayer life. Ever since I was small, I was raised as a Christian. Like everybody told me, pray for everything, lean on Jesus, lean on Christ. So that's what I had to do. He was like that one person, that one thing that I could always lean on. Like I've moved a lot ever since I was small. By the time I was 14, I moved 5 times, lived in 6 different places. So that was very hard. And then through middle school, high school, college, whenever something happened, he was that one positive thing that I could always go back to. So that definitely helped.
Kaavya, have you been able to share your faith of Jesus to someone else in your friend circle or age group?
I've definitely talked about it, but I'm not sure if I was able to bring anybody, per se convert anybody to believing. Even as I work right now, to my patients, like if somebody brings up the Word of God or talks about the Bible or talks about their faith, I engage in a conversation with them and hopefully provide them like some sort of comfort. I work in an ICU, so it's a very hardcore, very intense, very almost depressing kind of environment. So whatever encouragement I can give, So if somebody brings it up, I'll share that moment with them.
Kaavya, what would you say is the greatest aspect of your faith in Jesus?
He's that one constant source of hope, comfort. He's that one unchanging factor that's always been there, unconditional love, So that really helps through everything that happens.
Is there an aspect of your faith that you are not very much fond of?
Yeah, I believe, or I think that a lot of Christian views and a lot of Christian teachings contradict with the current, pop culture ideologies, like let's say abortion or same-sex marriage. Like it's completely polar opposite views on these topics, and I wish, people would hear me out when I have to say what I have to say about these things.
Is there a person that you look up to or draw inspiration from in your faith in Jesus?
Yes, I would say the leader of our prayer that I was talking about, the ministry. His name is Brother Dr. Mathews Vergis. He's done so much for Christ in the short amount of time he's been around. He's translated the Bible into multiple languages. He's penned and tuned hundreds of songs, and this TV channel in and of itself is his own brainchild. And above all that, he's always been there. Like whenever I need something, I pick up the phone, I call him, he makes the time for me. Or anybody really, whoever needs him, he's there for them. And that selfless giving, that ability to put everything aside for that one person, that's something that I truly admire, something that I hope to practice in my life more often.
Kaavya, if you were given a chance to go back in time and change something in your past, is there anything that you would have liked to do differently, or is there anything that you'd like to have changed?
One thing, I might have gone back to med school. If that was an option, maybe I would have thought about it a little bit more. But more importantly, I noticed that throughout the past few years, I've been trying to follow the crowd more than prior to. I would change that, because what I noticed is, at the end of the day, everybody's focused on their own life. Nobody's looking around. Nobody really cares what you're doing. So just, do yourself, follow what you believe in, follow your morals, because if you're comfortable with yourself, if you're okay with your conscience and you're okay with God, that's all that matters. What anybody else thinks doesn't matter. And I wish I could go back and walk in that holier path more.
What are your plans for the future?
I just started working, so in a little bit I want to go back and do my master's. I want to go back and get my nurse practitioner degree, and then possibly, if I still don't hate books and I still don't mind waking up that early in the morning, I want to go back and get my doctorate in nursing.
Kaavya, what would you say that you dislike most in the world today, especially as in the perspective of a youngster?
I would say a lot of people my age or younger even, they're in a very depressed or a very, low mood kind of situation. The other day, I had a patient, he was 22 years old. He was admitted to the hospital for attempted suicide. It was suicidal ideations. That's something, that really broke my heart. He's 22, he's younger than me. He should not be having thoughts about killing himself. Statistically, if you look at it, teenagers or like young adults, they're one of the most prominent age groups to attempt and successfully complete suicide. Why are you 14 and trying to kill yourself? That really says something about this world, So I wish there was something that I could do to at least impact one life, so they could turn away from that, like, I can't go forward kind of feeling, and turn back and have that hopeful outlook on life.
Kaavya, what do you think are the factors that lead to such depression among the youngsters?
In addition, it's like that lack of faith or that lack of hope, that something to trust on. Like, nobody really has that faith in Jesus. I feel like that if more people believed in Jesus and had that rock solid foundation, there wouldn't be so many of these negative problems that these young kids are faced with.
Now, Kaavya, you shared of your experience working with a 22-year-old. wherever you were working. Now, do you have any other experiences like that that really touched you?
Yeah, and it's actually a positive story. So I got off of orientation maybe 5-6 months ago, and while I was in orientation, we had this patient. He came in very, very ill. And what made it more touching is he's just a year older than my dad, so it brought it real close to home. He came in very, very sick. Nobody could figure out what was going on with him. He had a tube down his throat. He had all sorts of IV lines. He was getting all sorts of medications, and nobody could figure out what was going on. Finally, we did a bone marrow biopsy, and I was there to assist with that. And while we were doing it, we knew something was wrong because it was very hard to get a sample from him. Test came back, and it turned out that he had severe bone marrow cancer. And he ended up staying with us, I would say, from mid-November to mid-February. And his recovery was very, very slow, but eventually we were able to heal him, or at least control his condition, and we discharged him. But a couple weeks after that, he came back to visit, and he looked like a normal being. Like, he wasn't tied to the bed. He didn't have a tube down his throat. He came back. He had a real conversation with us. He was like a real human being. So like that difference that we were able to make, that he was my patient often because I'm the new kid they wanted me to learn. So that difference that I was able to make in his life, that was very encouraging. That was something that I was like, okay, I can do this. I literally helped bring somebody back into life.
That's amazing, Kaavya. Kaavya, have you had an experience where you felt the total opposite?
Oh, definitely. Again, patient stories. I had another one. He came in the day after Christmas, a very busy day, and again, very, very sick. He had very severe brain cancer, and he also had a tube down his throat, getting all sorts of medications. But the thing is, before he was in this kind of a state, he had said, if I become unable to make any decisions, and if I become that decompensated, I don't want any extreme measures taken on me. But his daughter was the one who was in charge of his healthcare in case something like that were to happen. So she revoked all his wishes, and she told us she wanted everything done. But the thing is, she was very nitpicky and very aggressive, and like questioning everything that we did for him. So it made caring for him very, very hard, and I ended up having him very often. I had him almost every time that I was at work. And his care was really compromised because we're dealing with her. We don't want to make any issues with her, but then we're not giving him the best care. So it's very disheartening to see that this daughter is going completely against his wishes to give him things that he never wanted in the first place. And we're compromising his care because we have to listen to her, or we would get reported. She did report us to our higher authorities. She even reported us to Washington. So it was very disheartening to see somebody go through such difficult, health situations because the daughter was going against his entire wishes. And the other day, actually, I had another patient with severely sick. She had terminal cancer. I've never seen something like that before. Like, her cancer site was rock solid. Like, rock solid does not feel like flesh. And she also had made her wishes clear that she doesn't want any extensive measures taken. But again, her next of kin, or the one who would be in charge of her health care once she's incapable of making decisions, was her son. He was very young. He's 22, 23. And he revoked, again, all her wishes. And we had to do everything for her. In fact, she actually had a stroke while she was my patient. And we had to, in these kind of situations, you have to make quick decisions and go with it. But even though she didn't want any of these extensive measures taken, we were forced to, and that's kind of sad. You have to respect people's wishes, but we were not able to because somebody goes against all their what they had planned or what they had hoped would be done for them.
Now, coming back to what you had talked about, the issue that bothers you the most in the world today being depression, what do you think, Kaavya, that you could do in your power to resolve that issue?
I hinted on this earlier, but my patients or whoever I'm around, if somebody's down or in a low mood, maybe bring up a good song, or maybe share a word of from the Bible. Or if somebody brings up, I go to church, or I like this Christian song that I heard. Like, engage in a conversation with them. People just need to talk. Like, if you talk to them, that takes away half their worry. So be that listening ear, and just provide some sort of encouragement in whatever form that I can. That usually helps.
That's a good thought. Now, Kaavya, when you're not working, what do you do to chill out or relax?
I work very long, tedious hours, so sleep. I sleep when I'm home, a lot. Other than that, sometimes I pick up a good book, listen to some music, watch some TV, watch some movies, go out and eat something, hang out with friends. I write sometimes. Once I have some more time and some more money, I'd love to travel, go see the world, but for right now, this is about it.
You said writing. Mm-hmm. What is your forte in writing? Is it poems, short stories, essays?
Anything that comes my way, whatever I'm in the mood for. I would say I'm best at like paragraph or like essay type writing, but I've done a few poetry pieces. I've done, I don't know, a little bit of everything here and there.
Can you share some of your work with us, Kaavya?
Sure. Throne of Grace. In a dark forest, a lamp I saw ahead, shining like the midday sun, giving off the warmth of a loving mother's heart. Moving closer to it, I saw writing, elaborate, decorative, as that of a mighty king's robe. My eyes started to swim within the scholarly words. Thoughts drowned in wisdom, yet as clear as the wide blue sky. Joy turned into bitter sorrow. Each word like a sword through the heart, guilt overflowing and tears falling like bullets. Then a man, clothed in grace, as white as snow, touched my soul. A hand as soft as cotton wiped away my sorrow. Like a bird, he rose and flew to the sun, with me safely tucked within him. Then he sat down on a throne engulfed in gold and jewels as countless as the stars. He placed me on his knee and called me his.
That was wonderful, Kaavya. You're really talented.
Thank you.
Kaavya, as we wrap up today's show, is there a message that you would like to share with the youngsters of today?
Sure. For the young ones, the ones growing up, I believe it's important that you find one circle of friends, one set of people who you can relate to, those who share your morals and values, because that's very important. If you're not surrounded by those who believe the same things as you do, what you do is going to be affected by their thoughts. More importantly, find that comfort, find that foundation in Jesus Christ, because he's always going to be there for you. No matter what happens, if you are willing to reach out to him, if you're willing to pray, and if you're willing to walk in his ways, he'll always be there for you. Everything's going to be okay. He's not going to let you down, So friends and Jesus.
Thank you so much, Kaavya, for joining us on Why Jesus. We wish you the best of luck for all your future plans.
Thank you.
Thank you, folks, for joining us on this week's episode of Why Jesus. Please join us again, same time, same place for next week.